My pleasure to welcome everyone to the third installment of our digital transformation series. I'm Clark Cahill, an events manager with the SCMP. So as I mentioned, this is our third installment. It's our first one doing it live and in person. This session asking, how will AI and automation impact jobs of the future? Today we'll be hosting two panel discussions over the next 2 hours, examining the most crucial components business leaders must consider when investing in automated technologies, while evaluating what the growing presence of automation in the business world means for the future of the human workforce. Before we start our panels, we need to give a big thank you to our series sponsors, which are Microsoft, the Hong Kong Shenzhen Qianhai Authority, Alibaba Cloud, and SoftBank Robotics. Well, without further ado, we'll bring our panelists onto the stage. We have delighted to bring John Artman, who is our technology editor at the SCMP. He'll be moderating the discussion. Joining him on stage are Fred Xu, who's the National Technology Officer with Microsoft Hong Kong, Ryan Chan, a sales director with SoftBank Robotics Hong Kong, Akina Ho, who's head of digital transformation and innovation with the Great Eagle Company, and Kenneth Scheck, the founder and head of Beta Labs with the Lane Crawford Joyce Group. Let's give a hand for our speakers, please.
Well, thanks everyone again for coming out. Obviously, the current conditions are not necessarily conducive to events like this, but I think it's going to be pretty darn interesting. So for this first panel, we're looking at automating business processes and trying to understand how businesses can best use technology to automate some menial tasks. But then I also think, to look at how business processes and maybe even artificial intelligence can help create better and more agile businesses. So I guess first we just kind of want to kind of lay the groundwork and kind of understand a little bit about how automation can actually be used. So what are some examples? But then also what are some mistakes? So Fred, why don't you help us set the stage a little bit? Okay. So when we're talking about business process automation, what exactly are we referring to?
Yeah, actually, when you invite me to this panel, we have a good discussion on what sort of automation or AI I want to share about. I can take like 2 days to talk about AI automation. But you put in a business process, in the context of business process. I think when we talk to customers this day, they're all looking into what called RPA, robotic process automation. So I think it's a real new, I would say, technology or application, including a lot of AI technology being infused in those solutions. So RPA, in short, is robotic process automation. What it does is actually automate some of the very tedious, I would say, clinical work process in your office, and you don't really need people to actually do it, instead using a robot type of software to do it for you. It become very, very popular. Actually, you look at all this analyst report, Gartner or like IDC, it's like a multi-billion dollar business and growing 20-30% every year. And also there's statistics saying over like 70%, 90% of company, large corporation will use RPA. Already. So I think that's an area I would say we like to share more in terms of like process automation, AI in a business process point of view. And then you want to add some comment as well?
Oh, now it works.
We have crossfire now.
It's amazing because RPA is one of the things that we're looking at as part of our ERP and HR deployment. Have you deployed RPA in your organization yet? Because we're looking for real life Hong Kong case studies right now.
Yeah, I mean, many cases. Of course, we do a lot. Like for example, we have just people. The good thing about RPA is that you don't really have to do a lot of coding. A lot of these RPA are local kind of thing. So anybody can do like RPA themselves. Even myself, I do RPA for when I post a YouTube with video, I do a program within my office, so automatically put a Twitter test outside and send myself an email. And all these things, I don't need to do any Python program. Everything can be done automatically. So in terms of like, we have a lot of special application related to COVID-19. For example, when we go back to office, we have to do the same thing like what we did, just come in, right? But instead of doing a QR code, putting a lot of form entry, we actually trigger a process.
But is there a fear of people losing their job? Because right now we're thinking of using RPAs to automate APAR processing, and because RPA can read emails and then deciphers and open attachments in email and type in those requirements into the system automatically to process, account payable and pay receivables and payments and stuff. Is there a fear in your organization
Yeah,
that
of
they
course.
will lose
I
their
mean,
job?
Yeah, it's a common question we answer all the time. AI automation will replace a lot of human job, right? For sure. Like during this industry revolution 1, 2, 3, 4, we always change the job nature, but we'll replace some of the human process, if you like. But we also help these people to gain new skill and do something more meaningful for organizations, right?
You're reskilling
Yeah,
them. Okay,
we
great.
do all
Thank
the
you.
time. We have internal reskilling program, a program for customer to reskill yourself. So I know this panel is not about reskilling. You have an panel on that, but I think it's a big thing. Although this RPA, you don't need coding, you don't need Python like machine learning, still you want to reskill people, use technology to help them to do their job. Just heard the news this morning. A lot of people put people back to home, don't go back to office, but many people cannot work at home. So what happens is when they come back to office, they have to double their workload. They have to do overtime. If you let them use this kind of RPA, per se, automate some of their process, will speed up their process. So they don't have to do overtime. So that's the beauty of that, right? So technology can help you, okay, to do things more efficient, but you still have to embrace this technology by giving your employee, your staff, skill training, new skill
Totally
program.
agree.
That's important.
Yeah, definitely. So, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the points that were just raised later on in the discussion. Thanks, Akina, for for helping out there.
No, I just wanted to know because I'm seriously looking about RPAs.
Hey,
Right.
sales.
Great. So Kenneth, so when Lane Crawford is looking at automation, what kinds of use cases or applications have you guys hit upon, and kind of how do you guys think about automation and applying it to your business lines?
So we didn't really look at it from an automation angle. I think I used to use machine learning, and I realized no one understands what machine learning is. So I used the buzzword AI, and suddenly everyone is amazed and getting a lot of requests. What is AI? So we actually really started from the AI angle and looking at the business processes, mapping out across the whole group, across all companies, understanding where are the decision-making points and where are the optimization opportunities. That's where we generate our use case repository. Basically, it could take us like 5 years to complete all of them. And when you're working on certain projects, automation is just a subset of the AI, right? So we did automation on rule-based programs, and as well as AI machine learning side on customer-centric use cases, like predicting when the customer is coming back to purchase, when is the next replenishment date, where should I allocate certain stock from store A to store B to maximize the sales. So from within the details in the processes, you can see a lot of stuff. Even for HR, as Akina just mentioned, predicting which person is highly likely to leave the company, right? So what are the certain characteristics of that person that would drive that person to leave the company, right? Even we built an AI program on uploading skills, and the AI help you to search for the best profiles. So many different stuff from back office to front office all across the company.
But so I guess, I mean, how does that development process work then? I mean, so you guys are kind of in charge, or your department is more in charge of kind of pushing a lot of this change to the rest of the organization. So is it usually like, where a decision maker will come to you and say, hey, we have this problem, or is it kind of more of you guys on the back end saying, hey, there's this problem, and maybe we can find a solution?
Yeah, I was just talking to Akina. It's almost impossible at start to have someone knocking on your door and say, hey, I want this, I want that. They don't know what AI is, right? So the first day they thought, oh, AI, you're basically a tech team, right? So, oh, can you fix that ERP system for me, right? So it takes like an education process. So we hosted like 50 people executive leadership training, teaching them with hands-on, actually collaborating with Microsoft hands-on Power BI visualization, hands-on model building using ML Studio on Microsoft Azure. And then not that we expect them to build the models themselves, but to realize what the process takes, how much effort it takes, and what do you need to consider when you build a model, right? So, and then you start getting requests and use cases, and you basically knock on their doors with the POC demo with your assumptions, and start driving quick wins and drive interest.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I mean, so I think, I mean, you know, one of the interesting things about kind of the current state of industry, I think across the board, is really, you know, there's much more room for play in terms of bringing technology to solve problems. But the big issue is how exactly do you do that? And again, I think you hit upon it, is the role of education. So it's not only, of course, just in skilling up employees, but just kind of helping people to understand, you know, what technology can do and what it definitely can't do. But then also how to become a bit of a AI whisperer, if you will. So learning how to talk to your tech teams and engineers. So Akina, you're coming at automation and artificial intelligence from a bit of a different perspective. So how does the Great Eagle Company, how do you guys think about automation and artificial intelligence? And similar question, like what kinds of use cases are you finding to be most valuable?
Well, what Kenneth said is change acceptance is not an easy thing, especially for Great Eagle. We're in property development, which is a very traditional business. So first thing we're trying to do is to automate sales journey. This is a big wow in our organization. What do you mean by automate sales journey? When we do sales automations, in the sense of going after leads and stuff like that, we're currently right now using Salesforce Marketing Cloud. We preset the journey saying that how many times have you looked at the email, looked at our Instagram post, and did you do any of the action that we asked you? If you didn't, the software will learn about it automatically based on the company preset requisites. They send you a second email, which is pre-draft, right? And we don't have to have someone push the button anymore. It's just automate based on the journey you're in. Did you put I'm sure you guys been online shopping, and sometimes how do they know I didn't place the order yet? You put stuff in your basket, they're stalking you. It's not literally stalking you in person, but the software is stalking you. And they know as part of your journey, you have shopped, but you have not purchased. And they'll send you a second email, this time hopefully with a 20% discount, right? If you buy now, buy it. And if you went to the payment page and you haven't paid, they also know that. So every step of the journey, they track you and it automates it. So we have to predict what the journey is like based on our campaign and what is the purpose of the campaign. And then we preset these requirements and we preset these drafts of messages, and the system does it. So that we're currently doing that right now. I'm not sure you guys heard of Wisdom of Living. It's a brand new brand that we're rolling out. It's kind of fun, you know, like now we're asking people to post their dream home on our site. It's all triggered by a journey in the back end, AI, you can say that. And we're trying to learn. We're not as sophisticated what Kenneth has built, learning about the behavior yet, but we're gathering data. And then if you post your dream home on a website, you get a $30, coffee academic coupon to go buy coffee or whatever you want. So then that's automatic, done. And these are the stuff we're practicing, and it's not easy. You might think, oh, it's so simple. It's changing the mindset and acceptance. And then the lead, you might expect a lot, but it may not be, because people are still not playing the game accordingly to what is predicted.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about change management and stuff like that in a minute, but I also just wanted to come to Ryan real quick. So Ryan, I mean, like again, I think this is what's great about this panel. I think we have a real diversity of perspective here, and so you're working specifically with robotics and building robots and kind of physical automation as it were. And so where are you guys focusing right now, and where do you see kind of the best returns and kind of the most interesting areas for research and development?
Yeah, I think a lot of the points that everyone was talking about has a common theme here. We're trying to eliminate mundane tasks. We're trying to smooth out processes. We're trying to make our employees, our customer lives better, right? Well, through AI automation, whether it's software or hardware. So software and robotics, we make physical robots, and we try to deliver that type of benefit, automation in the physical space. So it is very unfortunate about the COVID-19 situation across the world. Just so happened we have a cleaning robot, which is actually outside in display. So it cleans the floor, and also we have an add-on attachment that does disinfecting. It has a disinfecting spray. So in combination, you're getting additional benefits. For example, for an office, right? If someone wants to clean their floor, previously floor cleaning has been it's backbreaking basically, and the janitorial staff are aging right now, and the demand for cleaning is much higher right now. So we're trying to introduce different robots, and in my scenario, it's cleaning robots. We do have other robots, but in the current situation, how do we introduce these additional tools that can alleviate the workforce so that they can do so much more? So we're adding efficiency into the workforce. At the same time, how do we make those devices, and Fred was mentioning how there's no coding required in his automated platform. In our robots, anyone who knows how to use the touch screen, basically we're targeting audiences from teenagers all the way to people who are close to retirement, who can understand how to operate the robot, and that's where the benefit comes in. The tools need to be able to integrate with whatever we have today. If I need to fly a rocket ship to know how to run a robot, that doesn't help us in any
Did
way.
your sales went up?
Yes, but I mean, it's still very unfortunate to see the situation right now. We're happy that our robot is helping a lot of our customers, and then with an introduction of an add-on for disinfecting later in December, we're seeing a much higher interest on top of what we have right now. We're just focusing on how we can help the community to solve the problems they see today. Yeah.
So I guess the question, Ryan, is kind of when you're talking with businesses or other institutions, possible clients, how do you educate them? Like how do you explain kind of why your product is useful and why they should go with you as a service provider?
Yeah, I mean, obviously a lot of them come to us asking for optimization in their workflow and all that, right? But I always like to quote, Henry Ford once said, if you ask the customer what they want, they always want a faster horse, right? So I kind of see automation differently, right? Almost like Henry Ford, you don't need a faster horse, you need something different, right? So in my example, they always ask for a cleaning robot that can 100% clean everything. Like, does it go under the chair? Does it go under the table? Does it clean the ceiling and all that? All kinds of questions. But the idea is, if the robot can clean 90% of your floor, what else can you do, right? If your team is not answering, right, not answering email, what could they have been doing, right? Or in different scenario, I think we can ask ourselves the same question. But customers are always looking for one-to-one replacement. And I think we touched a little bit about like job security. If we think about one-to-one replacement, yes, there'll be, okay, some people might be replaced, but in reality, the automation is to upskill people so that we can get a lot more together.
Yeah, and I think it's just really interesting because we were watching your robot out in the hallway earlier, and I think that there's a bit of kind of a misconception about what it is and what it's supposed to do. So, for example, as humans, our main sense is visual, and so if we see like dirt or if we see something on the ground that needs to be picked up, we'll just go right to it and we'll pick it up. Whereas a robot is just like, okay, this is just kind of this is my routine. This is the track that I'm going to follow. I'll clean up the paper eventually, but it's not going to be like just like kind of A to B kind of.
And we interview a lot of cleaners and we talk to a lot of cleaning companies. It's called spot cleaning. They see a little bit of white paper on like a gray carpet, they clean that. Guess what happens to the rest of the carpet? Not being cleaned, right? So carpet and floor is actually one of the dirtiest. Yeah, dirtiest place, and a robot just cleans every inch. You program it to do it, it's gonna do it. Whereas human, if you do the same thing, it's going to be backbreaking. Just like answering 100 emails, that's impossible. For computer,
I do it. I'm just kidding. Just
I hope, if all your staff does it, it's going to be very, very tiring. And I think we're all looking at that direction of automation.
So Fred, a similar kind of question, because you do a lot of outreach and evangelization, if that's the correct term. And so what's your pitch to companies and institutions in Hong Kong? How do you educate them on the need for automation and maybe even AI?
I think it's the automation or AI back to the basic, like what you really want to do with this AI or automation, right? I think in terms of our definitions, we as a vendor, we actually provide infrastructure or technology service to actually amplify human ingenuity, to help people become smarter and better and easier for them to do things, right? So in terms of offering, what we do is like we make this technology, we call it democratizing AI. So the technology itself is available for anybody can use it. You don't need a PhD with like no rocket science, to do AI. Even myself can do AI. Yourself, your kid can do AI, right? So that's what we kind of like infuse this technology into the product that we sell to market. So I'm sure all of you using some sort of AI technology, either from Microsoft or anybody else, every day inside, and you probably don't know about that, right? So it's really how to actually put this technology in the product so anybody can use it. But also there are some engineers, they want to create their own stuff using machine learning, programming, even a robot you mentioned earlier. This generic robot, you just go around the floor to clean, but it can actually build specific robot to do specific tasks, like what we see in the manufacturing, right? So it's possible to do that, but with the amount of data, train the engine, the robot, you can do very specifically. So what we share with enterprise or even government is really, you want to do something what we call meaningful innovation. So you don't do AI because of sake of AI, right? You have to have a business case. You have to do something meaningful and impactful to a business to go through what we call envision or business value creation process. So once you go through it, you understand why you need that AI technology for what sort of business benefit, and then you actually put the team together and form a strategy or development team and put it in place. It's really, don't do it on the sake of AI. Right, because if you want to experience AI, it's everywhere, right? Use a mobile phone, there's a lot of AI there already. But it's really about value creation. So, and then we start from there and actually offer a solution to help our customer or government to achieve what they want to achieve.
So, I mean, I think that one of the challenges perhaps is also dealing with more traditional companies and not really being able to. I mean, before you can really do automation and artificial intelligence, you have to have data, right? You have to have, like, there has to be some kind of substructure to actually build on.
Yeah, I just give one example. Oh, sorry, quick one. I just give one example. Okay, quick one. When I talked to one of our customers, see here, this company actually have a team of people who do one thing, to do text translation. They translate the English document to Chinese document. Day in, day out. They have like 4 to 5 people. It's a legal firm, by the way. So I told them, why don't you just use Microsoft Word and press a button, translation? And they do it automatically. It might not 100% perfect, because a lot of legal terms they might not able to translate. But you Word, like at least 85% of the task, right? You don't really need someone sit down and do translation. So this is AI. It's already done, right? It's a very simple, straightforward solution.
I think in the business world, a lot of us are not techie, so we can't persuade people by data. If they don't want to change, they want to change. What we can persuade by is when how many people is leaving the job. Some of the jobs right now, and not just my organization and others, my peers, we kind of compare notes. About 40 to 60% of people who's doing administration work has a high turnover, right, within the company in a year. That's a lot of replacements and then the cost. So we basically says, these are the problems. We should talk to the BU head. Don't worry about resources in replacing these headcounts anymore, because now we have a technology to help you do most of the work. The people that are still retaining, that are with you, use them, like you said, to cover the other 20% that's not done by the machine. It can't clean 100%. You can't expect that. And then when there was a project we did for one of our residential property called Antolo, we used drone to do surveillance for especially the facade and everything like that. The project team thought that the drone would take over the human surveillors. It doesn't. Because definitely our surveillor will not be able to fly above the building or sighted. The drone does that. Then if you complement both of them, then it'll be a perfect report. So I mean, the idea and the concept is like, where is the pain point for people, not in terms of data, but in terms of cost?
Yeah, which is great. So Akina, actually, you know, you mentioned kind of working with this startup, and you know, kind of as the head of digital transformation innovation, working for, you know, a very traditional company. So first of all, just an observation, I think it's super interesting to see so many more corporations and traditional businesses doing digital transformation innovation. And one of the really interesting things is, because my background is kind of covering startups, is how much corporate innovation there is these days. But I'm curious, I mean, like, what's that conversation like internally, saying, hey guys, you know, there's this really interesting startup that we might want to work with, you know, how do you get people on board to actually trying this stuff out?
Okay, I have a trick. So normally when you present an idea to any BU head or company, the first thing there's three things they will tell you why they will not do it. Number one, I don't have the budget for it. Number two, I don't have the time for it. Number three, I don't have the people for it. So you said, oh, if I can get this for free, you don't have to do anything. You just kind of have access to it. Will you do it? Yeah, if it's free, I don't need to do anything. Sure. Got it. I found a company. And that shut them up. So normally when I work with startup, I always tell startups, because I'm a lot on panels and judges for startups, I always tell them, your first thing to market is not to make money. The first thing to market is to get market share. Give it away, because no one ever tried your product before. You need great companies to use your product and learn from it and build on top and improve. So when you can get startups who understand that vision and provide the product for free for you to test it out in your organization, and you do all the support to make sure it works, it will happen. The project took us 2 years, but it did happen.
Well, but is there any challenges? So obviously, kind of helping startups understand how to actually get market share and how to accumulate use cases is important. But then, is there any other kind of communication issues that you find, like, with startups? Because startups are used to moving extremely fast.
Oh yes,
But
exactly.
traditional companies are quite slow.
Yeah, NDAs on average on any corporation takes you maybe 3 months. NDA in startup takes you half a day. A contract for a corporation takes 9 months or a year. Contracts for a startup takes about 2 to 3 days. It is a huge, big difference. So the person who's trying to implement this must be the mediator to facilitate that to happen in a very reasonable time. That is a big communication gap. And also, startup doesn't understand disciplines, rules, and processes, and also compliances. So they think, why can't you just do that? And you have to translate. And corporation, especially if they don't want to do an innovation stuff, they will give you 1,000 reasons why, like, can you clean the little corner there in the back of the chair? Why they should not do it. So you have to make sure all these silly, I call them silly excuses, go away. And kind of bridge that.
So kind of something similar, because you know, you're in charge of a lot of the technology. I mean, what does that look like? Going, like, how do you, like, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges or barriers in terms of rolling out some of these things? Is it the you know, getting people to understand that it's necessary? Is it the training? What do you see?
Mindset is the biggest thing. Sorry, go ahead. No, I would love to hear from you.
Yeah, so maybe before I answer that question, I would like to respond also to Akina's statement on the start. I try to put on the startup hat, right? So a lot of startups, they build something and they're afraid of building something that people don't want, right? So kind of like a other side of the story is, from a startup side, if I provide service or products for free and there's actually no cost for adoption, and then someone using it at the end is not useful for a broader audience. So I think from putting on the startup hat, that's really hard to do it. And at the same time, the cash flow and everything is also important. So that validation from corporate, like even just $1, right, is a commitment, even like a LOI or like a contract, right? So it's a commitment for the startup to feel recognized that this is the right direction. So yeah, just to kind of like...
Agree, and I think from the startup, they need to understand the time from corporate law, the laws, the lawyers and everything, it's time and commitment. Yeah. If they're willing to put the effort to help push you through, That's a huge commitment because there's a lot of politics in big organization to do any project.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah. Speaking of politics, back to your question on rolling out. I think it's not exactly politics, but everyone has their own interests because they have their KPIs. If you ask me, I would definitely start from the top on changing the KPIs, right? So if that could happen, right? Because everything is driven, is performance driven, is whether it's OKR or whatever performance management framework, everyone is driven by bonuses, everyone is driven by recognition and promotions, right? So if the KPI is set at saying that, okay, 10% of your bonus is going to come from innovation, right? So how would people react and change their actions? But that being said, it's still hard to do it because you got to do it from the top and you're going to take endorsement. The alternatively, how we're doing it is really to understand what are their interests, right? So what is their KPI, what's their interest? That's always the first question I ask when I talk to as business users. I say, okay, let's cut the crap here, right? So let's talk about your KPIs and how we can help you optimize your KPIs. What exactly is your process like and how can we seamlessly integrate in your process but not changing your process? So why I don't like the word change management is because people hate changes. And to implement the best change management is really not to change at first. And then you slowly deploy changes and then slowly educate them. So that's my
Yes, to take an iterative approach, right? Where maybe even borrowing from Scrum or Agile and kind of pushing change. And so that's one of the things that I joined the SCMP recently, and one of the things is one of the problems for a new leader is like how do you kind of make things the way you want it to look, but at the same time not create a revolution.
Okay, one comment to that. Just happened yesterday. We launched a white paper. Actually, we do it together with EY to do what we call AI maturity survey. We interview actually over 160 companies around the region, including 30-something companies in Hong Kong. I'm not sure your company got involved in that too. The data show us as like almost like 85% company in Hong Kong or in the region have an AI project or start, and many of them actually in the pilot or early stage, but less than 7% of this company had a project in the what they call advanced level, maturity level. And the detail, when you down in the data, is the reason why Hong Kong is still left behind in some of the region or economies is one of the measurements about IT leadership. The IT leadership we actually fell behind.
Yeah,
and when you compare Chinese company too, right, I'm a little bit surprised. I thought Hong Kong really good IT managers, CIO, we have good IT, AI leadership, right? But when you compare with a company in China that we interview, in China interview, we actually fall behind. So I think the leadership is important. Okay, the kickstart project pilot stage easy, but get it all the way to advanced level to really create business value and send this value back to the enterprise is really difficult without good AI leadership or leadership within organization. And we drill down to leadership, there are a lot of data there. So if for audience here, if you're interested in that survey, go to our website and download that white paper. And we also have an assessment service. You test yourself, see your company is like, how ready are you in terms of AI maturity? So feel free to go there. It's free of charge white paper anyway.
And I think just on top of while everyone was talking about like adoption or from a startup perspective or from a corporate perspective, I do see, company asking for more time or less budget or a startup asking for commitment, and then we need leadership change. And I think one thing to add is I from a product perspective, I do feel like product excellence is something that everyone needs to focus on, right? Is your product actually solving for the problem that you are tackling, right? If you can present that really well, whether it's within a corporate to a leader to convince for budget, or whether a startup pitching to an end customer, whether to get the first dollar from someone or the first 3 months of subscription, the world has become very product driven, especially in these situations, pandemic situations. So it needs to be laser focused, and I think there must be some type of iteration, and everyone is trying to validate whether the product is correct or not. But just be relentless in solving for that problem, and I think good things will happen.
So I guess,
Just to talk about startup, I just saw Whitman, so I think about startup. So, I think one way to bring staff to enterprise is that you can do like a event, a hackathon event. We actually do it all the time with like Science Park and Cyberport. A lot of staff there, they look for company to actually apply their technology and test it out. So that's a couple program, I forgot the name of the program actually. We bring our customer to the office and bring to identify 10 or 5 startups that may have potential solution for them. And we let the enterprise customer share a problem or something they want to solve, right? So, and let this startup hack around a solution for them and do it like a 2-day event or something like that. We've been doing a lot. And unfortunately, due to COVID, we couldn't do it face-to-face now, and we have to do virtual and not that effective. But it's very good. Like, for example, we have one customer near the airport. They actually invite 5 to 6 startups, and eventually they adopt several of those startup solutions in the airport to do a lot of amazing things. And that startup become a grow up now. So it's really a good way to engage startup using hackathon event like that, and we're happy to organize them more. So, by the way, this week we have another hackathon, but that's for high school students. We're together with CIS. They have all the high school students around the region to take part in the hackathon event to come up with solutions around AI to solve environmental issues. That's really a great experience and bring startup to enterprise by doing this kind of matching program.
Yeah. So Kenneth, earlier you mentioned that your list of potential projects, it could take you 5 years to complete. So how do you prioritize? Like what when you're looking at all these projects, like how do you determine which ones you should focus on first?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there are a few areas we look at. The first one is how hard it is to execute it. Second is what is the business value that we are able to map, that we are able to forecast for the rest of the year if we automate it. And the third one is the scalability of the solution, how reusable it is, how scalable it is, how many other business units can actually adopt the same solution without tuning too much. So those are really the 3 key areas. Of course, the higher it is, the higher we would prioritize it. And then, of course, like there would be people like trying to challenge why you prioritize that before that. It's hard to, let's say, map a specific number to it and say that is higher than that, and that's why we're not doing it. But at the same time, that requires some socializing with the business users and to kind of alleviate that concern as well.
Do you find that the ones that end up getting worked on first, do they fall into like similar buckets, or do they end up being pretty diverse?
I would say every single company are going towards the same direction, and the roadmap is pretty similar. So basically, what our strategy is to work on a anchor business unit, and then to redeploy those solutions to other less mature business units. And we see that very impactful, and at the same time, it drives awareness as well, because we also publish our own white paper, not for external, but for internal, because those can really drive interest. People come in and ask questions, right? And then how can they understand that, oh, there's an existing solution, why don't we just adopt it? But in reality, actually, it requires quite a lot of tuning for different businesses, but at the same time, it drives awareness, right? And you have a fundamental base and case study for it.
Yeah, great. And so something very, very similar as well. I mean, so how do you prioritize projects? But then
that's one of my favorite subject to talk about, because what I do, I know you don't like the word change management, but that's what we do. When you do digital transformation innovation, it's not something you can follow traditional business school strategy formatting. Whatever you learn in Harvard or Stanford goes out of the door. Because if you have a plan where you want it to be, you have to treat it as like a puzzle. A puzzle, you have a vision or an idea what the picture looks like, but every pieces fits into the different thing. If you want to have a successful transformation in a big corporation or even a country, have a vision first. Know what is it that you want. Anything you can get done that can piece that picture together, do it. Because people will block you in every kind of ways. You cannot afford 2-3 years to plan one thing to be successful. Whatever you can do, plug it in. As time goes by, the picture slowly will emerge and fill as one. That's the best way if you really want to do digital transformation, change management in any company. Don't have a strict strategy, you will fail. Because people, especially, it's almost like going to war. If your enemy knows exactly what your path of conquer will be like, they will make sure there's counterattack and make sure you will never get their territory, right? So you don't tell them what is your plan or your war strategy. Be unexpected, attack from different angle, and then before they know it, they collapse.
So I wanted to kind of change direction slightly. So Ryan, when you're talking with stakeholders and clients, how do you manage expectations around what your products, either the hardware or the software? I mean, how do you manage expectations in terms of what it can't and can actually do?
Yeah, I think we touched upon a lot of the similar ideas just prior. I think just understanding the problem on hand and level setting with the customer, letting them know that what the problems we're trying to solve. At the same time, obviously understanding the customer's needs, current operation, what they're facing, right? I think like we were saying, a lot of customers might not know what they really want. And when they look at robot, they always think about like humanoid robot conquering the world or replacing my job or will AI destroy humanity and all that stuff from Hollywood, right? But in reality, I think service bots are things that can help tackle mundane jobs. So in our product pipeline, a lot of the ideas are just tackling mundane jobs. Same with a lot of software automation. It's just taking one task at a time. We're not going to, fire the whole department because we got this amazing AI. That's not going to happen, right? So having that general understanding, and to be honest, when we talk about robotics or automation, right, a lot of the customers are thinking the Hollywood, like AI, the Skynet destroying the whole world. And we just need to, together as an industry, just to evangelize the idea that AI isn't about, what we are,
I agree
perceived.
with that. And there's one point we have to understand. By 2025, 75% of the workforce are young millennials. They do not want those jobs. Seriously, do you want to wipe the floors? No, I don't think so. So I don't want, even at my age, I don't want to wipe the floors. So I mean, like, we got to understand the jobs that's going away are the jobs that no one wants, that's for the upcoming workforce. There is no conflict. But the idea, like you said, you got to change that mindset. It's not about you anymore. It's about the future.
And sometimes internal stakeholders, right? People convincing a higher management, or we convincing our customers, or just new ideas, convincing young and old, techies in the company, or just laymen in the company. I think the misconception is still there, but it is changing really fast.
Well, I mean, I have to wonder if it was a mistake with the nomenclature or the taxonomy inside the hype cycle, because everyone was talking about artificial intelligence, and as a layperson, you're thinking about the Will Smith movie, or you're thinking of maybe if you read Isaac Asimov or something like that, right? And so you're thinking of really what it comes down to is artificial general intelligence.
And when we talk about like a Hollywood movie example, right? The movie Back to the Future, people are very familiar with that in the 80s. And they were going to 2017, I think, 2016 or something. And that's past. And if you watch the movie again, you will see, oh my gosh, that's how they see the future, right? So they were basically drawing a straight line from what they had, right? It was fax machine back then. So I remember there was one scene where they can get the fax from the mailbox, like from any mailbox anywhere. Guess what? We're not getting our faxes. We're using our smartphones. So they basically drew a straight line from what they had to predict the future, right? You look at 60s, all the futuristic movies are like aluminum foil clothing and glass sliding doors and like beep boop, that type of robotics type of thing. So what we need to avoid, what we're trying to avoid or let the customer understand is don't draw a straight line from what we have. Things will change. What Kino was saying, things will change really fast in this unexpected way.
I think one of my favorite online memes is in the 80s I was promised flying cars, and all I've gotten is Twitter.
Exactly. I think that's exactly the point where we try to, as an industry, as together, as technology, advocates, we need to let the customer know that we're not trying to draw that straight line.
Exactly. And so Fred, similar question. I mean, what do you see are some of the biggest mistakes that people make when they're thinking about automation or when they're trying to implement it?
Yeah, I think, well, people make mistake all the time, I think. The biggest mistake, as I mentioned earlier, is we don't do AI because of sake of AI. You always have a purpose, what we really want to do, and you do need a leadership. You really have to have a strategy or AI culture, if you like, to support whatever AI will do.
Well, then, but then how do you build that then, right? Because like if again, like some kind of going back,
Outsource it.
no, but seriously, because like, you know, if you're a company kind of starting from scratch and you're just now thinking about it, like how do you go about building up to that?
Yeah, I think every project is the same, right? You always have to have a what called design thinking workshop and identify what a pain point is, what to address. But talk about the AI culture, I think that's most important. So for Microsoft, when we do use AI to do, for example, our financial forecast, okay? So we never miss our forecast for last, I don't know how many quarters, right? There's a lot of AI behind that, because once you have all the data, your business data, your forecast data, you can easily predict what's going to report to the analysts, right? So our CFO has have a project a couple of years ago on using AI culture or data culture to offer best like a forecast to our analysts before we actually publish our financial report. So in order to do that, we have to have a data culture of organization. What that means is if people don't input their data, the sales forecast data, the deal, opportunity information in the system. There's no way we can actually predict what we're going to give out, right? So we have go through a lot of, I would say, training, internal training, and before not just train people input data in the system, but train them to make sure that there's a data, how you actually protect the data privacy issue, what kind of data can be shared, cannot be shared. There's a lot of, I would say, internal training and enable. It's a worldwide program, so everybody have to go through that. And once they get through this thing, understand why we do that, and how to protect the data, how to observe the privacy of the data, and then we roll out this program in a successful way. So it's not easy, I would say. You have to have a plan, a process, and also a program behind to support that, and a lot of investment too in this area. I would say human resource training area as well. So that's how we actually get to the point.
I totally agree. I mean, like what Kenneth says, that having a dedicated department that focuses on that really makes a big difference.
So I think we want to open the floor to any questions. We have about 12 more minutes. Does anyone have any questions at all? Excuse me. All right. I guess that's, is there, no? No? Okay. All right. Well, I guess, so as a way to kind of round out the panel, and also I think to segue into our next panel, we talked, it's been brought up a few times already, you know, kind of the future of work and the role of automation and artificial intelligence in the workplace. And basically what it sounds like is that, again, like there's not going to be this one-to-one. You're not looking at one robot to one human or anything like that. But then what is it going to look like? I mean, so let's take it from that angle first of like, what's it actually going to look like inside the workplace? And whoever wants to take that first.
Well, I think first step is as there's no binary switch where we just flip over and software automation and hardware automation takes over the world, right? So the integration, how do we integrate automation into the lives of current workers is probably step one. Having robotics or software or processes that are easy to follow by today, people that are working today. And I think that's an important first step. And from that point onwards, you know, what will be the next steps? How do we make their lives better so that we can upskill them? Or they can be doing some other critical but less mundane task. I think that is the first step. And then after that step is done, I think the obvious will come.
I agree. So like, for example, for doing invoicings and AP and AR, let's say that you have 10 people in that team just to do that day in, day out. You can actually replace at least 70% of the workforce and reskill them to do something else. Because one thing about robotic process automation is RPA is that they don't take vacation, they don't get sick, and they work 24/7. So, and they can work all time zone. The people that the remaining should be doing supervisory work or go through issues, items that are flagged as issue, because These machines are trained to do what you know. There are a lot of issues and situations that they never encounter or the person never encountered. Then that's when human comes in. Okay, it's changing the equation of where you put automations with robots and human or otherwise. I mean, like physical or otherwise, and then where you put the human value is. So I see it's a combination based on what function they're taking over. In law firms, you mentioned law firms. Law firms right now don't use paralegal anymore or researchers. They use robots to read all the legal documents and all the cases because they read much faster than human and store much more information. Instead of people reading tons of cases and say, oh, you can, or now Wisconsin versus New York, case number 564. You just tell them what cases fits this kind of mode and the computer spits it right out. Changes. Right now, things are happening. We just are not aware of it.
Yeah, my suggestion is get people to experience AI themselves by letting them use this technology. For example, you have an office setting, right? So you're using Office 365 from Microsoft. It's like using meeting or video conferencing, if you like. You turn on some of the AI features that you might not know, right? For example, it's an auto transcript features. So when people speak, you can actually translate it and actually, I would say, what's that? Captioning all this wording in underneath your screen, right? So people actually can see that auto transcript everything. You don't have to write down. So the features are already built in, right? So people may not aware of that. When you open up a PowerPoint or Excel to translation, type read out loud features, can read a document to you, you can dictate. So these are all AI infused in the product that people use day in and day out. Let them experience them so they will not be afraid or scared. And tell them, what if I put all this feature in the standard business process application you're using, they will not be scared.
So should we stop using the word AI in the workplace? I mean, like, because it seems to me
you're already using, you might not aware.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, it's just interesting to me. I mean, I when I was a kid, I learned how to play Go, Weiqi, and it was really interesting to watch the past couple of years what Google has been doing inside of Go, and I think that a lot of professional players and commentators were very concerned because they're like, oh, okay, this was like the last bastion of human intelligence, and computers would never be able to do it. And then, of course, the computer did win eventually. But what I found really interesting was that some of the commentators during the match were saying that a lot of professionals, they're learning from the artificial intelligence from this, right? And so what they found was that some strategies that were first developed 300-400 years ago, but then kind of went out of fashion. Well, the AI brought them back and started actually applying them again, but in a different way. And so professional players were then learning how to play differently, learning how to think about the game differently. And so that's what I find to be so fascinating is that there is this kind of real opportunity to learn and to cooperate with artificial intelligence. So obviously there's the one side of it where it unleashes creativity because we don't have to be so involved with menial activities and things like, and kind of rote things like that. But on the other hand, there's like it's as it becomes more sophisticated and does more complicated things, we actually can learn how to approach certain problems or how to solve problems.
And I think that's a prime example of what the next generation or the new type of jobs that will be created is people who will be looking into the strategic side of setting up the automation or programming the next robot that would solve the next problem, right? The AlphaGo computer can only play Go, right? Ask it to play chess, it does not play chess, right? So it's very specific tasks that they will handle where human can be the agile person to craft the whole concept.
Yeah, I mean, give you a perfect example. In maybe 20 years ago, a kid at 10 years old, their form of being an entrepreneur is sell lemonade at the corner. My 10-year-old niece is thinking of building an online business, selling bracelets she's going to make. She already has a company name. She's researched on her own that she's going to use Wix to build her website. She already have her own KOL image set up. I mean, this is amazing. Just if you can understand the young people coming in, they're going to take technology and change it the way they going to see how it's going to serve them. What we are thinking that the business is like for now, it's not going to be the same anymore in the next 10 years. She's only 10.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, once I realized just how important programming is going to be. So, for example, my background is humanities, so I never learned computer science or anything. But my son is 8, and he's been learning how to code Scratch and Python for the last couple of years, because we realize how important that is. But okay, I think that's about all that we have for this panel. Thank you so much, Fred, Ryan, Akina, and Kenneth. Thank you so much again for taking the time and sharing your insights today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.